We have seen what happened with Roman Abramovich. You sold your shares to Alisher Usmanov, who's since been sanctioned. Where is your head with all this and what has happened in recent weeks and months, David?
Well, of course, we're all clever with hindsight. This was 15 years ago, and in any case, as I said before, my shareholding was only part was 15%. It didn't give anybody control, and obviously, what's happened recently is taken the game to another level. But that was what I did at the time, and I have to say that I did give Stan Kroenke the opportunity to buy those shares, or indeed anybody else. So I have no regrets.
Sure. David, how would you evaluate the legacy of Abramovich in terms of what he's done for football, or what it did for football? Did his investment in 2003 enhance or ruin the Premier League?
Oh, no, well, if you ask any Chelsea supporter, it enhanced Chelsea, there's no doubt. They were virtually a busted flush before he came in. They could have gone into administration, and he saved the club. And then you look back and you think of all the trophies and what he's achieved and the brilliant players that he's brought to the club. So every Chelsea fan think what happened with Roman was fantastic.
But what did it do to the ecosystem of football? I know you've got a strong view on that side.
Did it distort it? Yes. And of course, obviously, we had a sore point over the Ashley Cole transfer, which hurt us at the time. And
what was that?
What was the Ashley Cole?
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, we should never have lost him, in my opinion. And his contract came up for renegotiation, and we didn't offer him the right sort of money. And meanwhile, Chelsea did. And then there was this clandestine meeting, which it was a funny story. You guys being in the press, you'll appreciate this, because I got a call one day from a journalist, I think from the News of the World at the time, and he said, we've got a hot story off the press that your player Ashley Cole is actually being tapped up by Chelsea. I said, oh, yes. He said, I think you should come and see us. Really? So I went down to their offices, the News of the World offices, and they said, here's a signed statement from a waiter in the restaurant, it was in the hotel, where Ashley Cole was meeting Chelsea. And he saw he was an Arsenal fan, the waiter, clearly. And he gave the story to the News of the World, and broke there and then. And that really was the end of that. It was a great shame, because Ashley was homegrown. He was an Arsenal boy. And I regret we didn't do enough, really, at the time to keep him at the club. And it was also when we were talking about building the stadium and finances, the tensions were raging about how we were going to finance the new stadium, and we were watching every penny, and consequently we didn't do enough to keep him. And I regret that with hindsight. So, Ashley, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
It's a fair comment, because I think that's true. I mean, Ashley took a lot of stick, didn't he?
Yes.
For what was said. And obviously the financial constraints of Arsenal Football Club at the time were, as Mr. Dean's explaining. And I think it's good that we hear that.
David, in your view, is the European Super League really dead? I know you had strong views at the time. Incidentally, Arsene Wenger joined us on that morning. Simon and I were on with Danny Murphy. This is what Arsene said on the European Super League morning.
Well, I would say that's a bad idea. You know, football has to stay united. That is the most important thing, and based on sporting merit, and overall to respect the history that has been built for European football. And that I believe personally that this idea will not go far. I believe as well that there's a more dangerous idea behind that, is a big threat for the Premier League. You know, when I was still in charge, there was a lot going on from other countries to try to diminish the dominance of the Premier League, and a project like that will certainly accelerate that. Absolutely, we have all to fight to keep football simple, understandable, and based on merit, and that everybody has the same chance and dream to be successful.
You remember that, Simon, when Arsene Wenger joined us that morning? He was right. Just as you said that morning, this won't go far, and it didn't go far, but you think it might come back.
Oh, absolutely. Undeniably. The key component of it that unwound it was merits. How anyone would think that something that doesn't have meritocracy is going to fly, I don't know. And why people bother to get off their stool and put forward it and then sit back down on their stool without throwing a punch is perplexing. But, you know, there were three major events, and a fourth to come. The three major events in football are David Dean's vision, alongside a few others, but David at the front of it for the Premier League, the introduction of Roman Abramovich, and the arrival of Sheikh Mansour. And the next frontier will be broadcasting deals that the platform does itself, the Premier League does itself, or something like a European Super League that has seed capital from the clubs that go in there and provide the intellectual capital to it, and meritocracy.
Do you see it going that way, David? Simon's Netflix of football idea, is this the Premier League selling itself short still regards TV deals as to where it could go?
When it was first announced, within a couple of days, I was asked by Football Focus to go on their programme, and I remember using the word abhorrent. I felt that the idea of getting a dozen or so clubs, because their names happen to be Real Madrid or Barcelona or AC Milan or Manchester United, somehow just catapulted into a closed league without promotion and relegation, right, was immoral and obscene. And it had to be consigned to the waste paper basket. And it was at that time that the fans found their voice. And that was wonderful. And in fact, ultimately, it was the Prime Minister, it was Boris Johnson, who came out saying that he would introduce what he called a legislative bomb against those clubs. And they ran at that, and they read the tea leaves wrong. And it was conspired, and I'm afraid to use the G word, it was greed, just looking about money.
So if you'd been Arsenal at the time, you'd have rejected it.
Using Simon's words, it has to be meritocracy. It's 11 against 11, and that's the starting point.
You would have rejected it if you had been there right out of hand.
Absolutely.
Mr. Dein, do you see the other European clubs coming back on a Super League? Because as Arsene Wenger was telling us just the other day, I think £1.5 billion has been spent in the Premier League in this last transfer window, and 250 million has been spent in the rest of Europe. So it's so dominant here financially.
Martin, you're right. They want to slow down our train because we've got the fastest train on the track. So it suits the other countries in Europe to try to slow us down. But meanwhile, we're blazing the trail. The Premier League goes out every weekend, goes to 195 countries around the world. A couple of weeks ago, I was on Turkish Airlines flight going from London to Istanbul. I flicked through the channels. I saw Liverpool playing Newcastle live, 30,000 feet in the air. It wasn't the Bundesliga, it wasn't Serie A, it was the Premier League. And that gave me a lot of pleasure because obviously being one of the founding fathers.
Jim, I know you're asking questions.
I
just want to present this. So just looking at you've been an incredible visionary and you've an ideas man. Which was the best idea and the best appointment you made? So you were instrumental
signing you, Martin.
Instrumental in bringing the Premier League, the Premier League, if you see it. You were the person who presented that idea, and you also brought Arsene Wenger to Arsenal. Which one of those?
Well, I don't think
was the best decision you made.
It's very kind of you to ask me that.
Go on,
question.
David. It's a good question.
It's difficult because everything has its place in life. It's like saying which player was your favourite.
What's the outstanding one in your mind? Come on.
Well, certainly I've got I'm very proud of being involved, perhaps being the founding father for the Premier League. When I see how far it's gone today, I remember using the expression, we knew we had an aeroplane on the runway. We didn't know how high it was going to fly. Well, it's gone to the stratosphere. So that gives me a lot of pleasure every time I see the numbers coming in.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.